What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Loreverse. So when people talk about a Game of Thrones sequel, most people assume the same thing. We stay in Westeros, we deal with the fall of Bran the Broken, Six Kingdoms, and we watch Sansa navigate the politics of a newly independent North. But what if that's the wrong move? What if the smartest and most dangerous direction for a sequel series isn't to look at the throne that's left, but to look at the world that was abandoned? And we need to leave Westeros entirely. And today we're talking about why the future of this franchise isn't in the Red Keep, but it's in the shadows of the Free Cities, and it's in the ruins of Slaver's Bay, and it follows the only character who was ever truly built for a world without borders, Arya Stark. Because Arya sailing west of Westeros wasn't just a cool way to end her arc, it was a setup for the most ambitious lore expansion in George R.R. Martin's universe, and it's time to talk about the Essos aftermath. Now, let's talk about why Westeros is a dead end for a sequel. So let's start with the uncomfortable truth here. Westeros is politically exhausted. By the end of Game of Thrones, the game is over. The Iron Throne was literally melted into a puddle, and the great houses, Lannister is cooked, Tyrell is extinct, Martell is a question mark, and the realm isn't unified by fear or dragons anymore. It's unified by a tired compromise. And the problem now is that, high stakes drama requires a struggle for power. And in a world ruled by a three-eyed raven who can see every conspiracy before it happens, you don't have a political thriller anymore. You have a surveillance state. So the solution is Essos. Essos is vast, unstable, and culturally fragmented. Unlike Westeros, which is one giant continent-sized kingdom, Essos is a collection of city-states, each with their own lore, their own gods, and their own militaries. And so while Westeros is trying to heal, Essos is currently undergoing a systematic collapse. And it's the perfect place for a story that isn't about sitting on a chair, but about surviving the chaos. Now, Arya Stark, let's talk about her. Right? Arya Stark does not belong in the new Westeros. Her siblings have all found their places. Sansa is the queen, Bran is a god, and Jon is a ghost, and they represent the restoration of their family. Arya represents disruption. Her entire arc from season 1 to season 8 was about shedding identities. She was Arya the orphan. She was a cupbearer. She was no one. She survived by adapting to the worst parts of the world. And she has the traveler archetype now. So by sending Arya to Essos, the show gets a POV character who understands the street level. And also, she isn't just a traveler. She is a living weapon. She has the skills of the House of Black and White, but the moral compass of a Stark. So in Essos, Arya isn't arriving as a conqueror like Daenerys. She's arriving as a witness. And in a continent full of secrets, a witness who can wear anyone's face is the most dangerous person in the room. Now, this is a key detail that most fans overlook. Daenerys Targaryen did not leave Essos in a good place. She blew through cities like, Astapor, Yonkai, and Meereen, and she broke their ancient economic systems, which was slavery. And then she left. And she left a mercenary in charge of a second son's peacekeeping force. So the reality is, in the books and the show, Slaver's Bay was already sliding back into chaos before she even reached Westeros. And also, Volantis is the oldest of the free cities. So they have a massive slave population and a priesthood that literally thought Daenerys was a god. So now that the mother of dragons is dead, what happens to the cults that worshipped her? What happens to the warlords who were hiding in the shadows while the dragons were alive? A sequel set here would be a grim, dark look at the cost of revolution. And it's basically Game of Thrones meets a post-war Western film. Now, by the end of the series, Arya Stark is no longer a child soldier. She's something Westeros doesn't have a word for. But here's the internal conflict. She rejected the Faceless Man. She told Jaqen, a girl is Arya Stark of Winterfell, and I'm going back home. So the identity crisis here is what happens when she realizes she can't just be Arya Stark anymore. The war is over, and there's no one left on her list. And so now we are going to see like an ethical dilemma here, too, because in Essos, she will be tempted to use no one magic for her own ends. And this sequel would be a psychological deep dive into a woman who spent her youth learning how to kill and now has to learn how to live. And so Westeros was always the political heart of the history. Okay. Essos is the mythological heart. And this is where the lore could get wild, because we could talk about the Red Priests, right? They are way more active in Essos, and they have temples that could rival the Sept of Baelor. Ashai by the Shadow, right? The place Melisandre came from, a city where no children live, where the sun doesn't shine, and where shadow building is a common practice. And also the Valyrian ruins, the Smoking Sea. No one goes there and survives. So a sequel set in Essos allows the franchise to lean back into the high fantasy elements of Game of Thrones, which is magic, sorcery, and ancient gods, without it feeling out of place. And Arya navigating these magical minefields keeps the story grounded because she doesn't use magic. She survives it. Now, Game of Thrones was a story about power destroying families. An Arya-led sequel in Essos is a story about identity surviving power. So the sequel could ask this question: who cleans up the mess left behind by the legends? Daenerys and Jon Snow were the legends. They did the big world-changing things. Arya is the person walking through the ruins of those decisions. And so it explores the collateral damage of the Great War, and it looks at the people who didn't care about the Iron Throne, but had their lives ruined by it anyway. And this makes the story feel more modern, more cynical, but also more hopeful because it's about individuals finding meaning in a broken world. And so then from that, we're going to see this ripple effect, right? So we're going to see like Westeros from the outside. And this sequel, so like, I don't think the sequel has to ignore Westeros, but it has to reframe it. So through Arya, we can see how the world views the Starks. To the people in Braavos or Pentos, King Bran isn't a hero. He's a terrifying, all-seeing sorcerer king on a distant island. And the Stark legacy, does the name Stark mean honor or terror to the rest of the world now? And the west of Westeros, right? What if Arya finds that the world is round and ends up on a far eastern coast of Essos? And the story becomes about the ripple effects of the series finale. And it makes the world feel massive again, rather than this small claustrophobic hallways, leading to King's Landing, right? Why is this the right way forward? Number one, the Game of Thrones sequel can't just be a victory lap. Number one, because all the fans hate it. So it can't just be more of the same. It has to chase meaning. And by shifting the focus to Essos and putting the weight of the story on Arya Stark's shoulders, you aren't just continuing a show. You're evolving a genre. You're taking the best character from the original series and putting her in a world where her skills actually matter. This isn't a story about a crown, it's an aftermath story. And as we've learned from the best lore, the aftermath is usually where the most honest stories are told. But what do you guys think? Do you want to see the Shadowlands of Vashai through Arya's eyes, or do you think the story should have ended at the shores of Westeros? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And I understand, like, a lot of you guys' opinions are going to be based by the last season because it's not book accurate, and we know that, and they really smoked it in a bad way. But I'm just talking about if they were to make a sequel canon to the last season, this is what I think it should be about. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great day. Stay crispy and peace out.